All right, Gihan, thanks for doing this. I know we've been talking about it for a while. I, as well as the folks here, are very excited about this. And I had a lot of people who unfortunately couldn't make the time, but are looking forward to getting this recording, so no pressure. Before we get into the topic of how to do ESG comms well, tell us the charity that we're going to be donating to today.
So the charity is WOCAN, and it is an African-based charity that helps females and women to go into agriculture and use agriculture as a way to create businesses for themselves. And because I've recently done an extensive research on the role that females have to combat climate change. And we found out that actually female and girls play a huge role. And if they are involved, they would be able to definitely help us with the climate change. So that's the charity that I have chosen.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Okay. ESG comms. We certainly need more than 10 minutes to properly get into this, but knowing that we only have 10 minutes, I mean, where do you want to start? How should the modern marketer be thinking about ESG comms? Like, where do you even begin in somebody's role?
Very, very deep and meaningful conversation. So as a marketing team and a head of marketing, you need to think of ESG as the reality, as the norm. This is not going away anytime soon. So it's not a trend. And the way to start thinking about it is by upskilling yourself and finding ways to understand it, because it's a very complex topic and it's divided into 3 very different areas. So the E, for example, is all about how your organization impacts the environment. And it focuses around several elements. Some are applicable to you, some are not. So it will include the likes of what is your waste management schemes as an organization? What is your carbon emission as an organization? What is your water usage as an organization, for example? So that, and then the second aspect of the ESG is the S, and that's a more human aspect of the term. And that looks at your organization and how it impacts the society that you are operating in. So it looks into how are you treating your employees? How are you impacting the community that you're in? So are you donating to the charities that are within your communities? Are you employing people from the communities, for example? It looks at your employees' health and safety. It looks at your gender pay gap. So think about it as the human aspect of how do you operate as a business. Then comes the G, and that's the most, in my opinion, it's the most important aspect. And that is, how are you governed as an organization? What are the policies? What are the procedures that you have internally that would protect you from falling apart? How is the board formed? What is the gender gap? What is the gender diversity between the board member? What is the power? What is the power between the chairman versus CEO, for example? And that is basically where the marketer needs to think and start thinking of, breaking it into 3 elements, trying to understand what each element entails, picking up what they need to learn about that's applicable to your organization as a marketer. And then last but not least, ask and test, what do your customers need from you when it comes to the E, the S, the G? What do your investors need from you? And what are the regulators asking of you?
So, you have a lot of experience working with a bunch of different businesses on this topic. I'm sure you've seen it done well and not well. I'd be curious, maybe you can talk about specific kind of case studies or not, but when it comes to the businesses that are doing it well, or I guess you could also focus on the ones that aren't and talk about the opposite, but what are some of the things that you've seen that really contribute to being successful with ESG communications?
There aren't a lot of organizations who are doing it well, Eric, because it's a new discipline. It's a new ways of communicating such a technical topic. And even the ones who are pioneering this ESG communications, they're still falling short when it comes to element of greenwashing. So, for example, I'm an investor in ecology. And for those of you who don't know what ecology is considered one of the UK's largest carbon offsetting organization. And they're a B Corp, I think, if I'm not mistaken, maybe not. But they're definitely heavyweights in this market. They've just got through a huge funding round and everyone is backing them up. However, what they fell short in, they made a couple of mistakes recently, very recently, and I, as an investor, highlighted it to them. They've used Stephen Bartlett, who is a social media mogul here in the UK, and he's part of this program called Dragon's Den. And he was the face of their latest advertisement, encouraging people to offset their carbon and to live a greener life. But what they didn't do is their due diligence. What they didn't realize is that, or maybe they did, we don't know because they never answered me back. Stephen Bartlett is involved with businesses who are heavy in not human trafficking, but human slavery, such as Bohu, such as Pretty Little Things. Okay, and so some of them they're trying their best, some of them are not. So ecology are trying their best. They have said, we've made a mistake, we're going to rectify it publicly. But others bluntly just lying in your face. And you know that they're lying in your face. For example, BlackRock. Finnick is he's very into his annual letters to the CEOs, encouraging them to put people and planet ahead of profit. But what's not clear is they're still investing in fossil fuels, which is fine. I'm not silly. I know for a fact they cannot just stop investing in that. I know that. But what's not okay is the fact that you're telling us to do something, but you're not even trying to help these businesses to inject more money into research and development, or more money into technology that would, eradicate or limit their carbon emission. And to me, that's the biggest mistake, is that you're trying to communicate it, but you're not taking your time to test the messaging and test the accuracy of your data beforehand.
So I think you talked a little bit about this in your answer to the first question, but and I know this segment is going to be a little bit shorter just so that we have enough time to talk as a group, but to tee things up for the group conversation, and sorry for people listening after the fact that you won't be part of it, but what would you say are kind of the 2 to 3 things that people should do differently after having this conversation with you based on your experience? Like if you really had to package it up into like do X, Y, and Z, or make sure you're doing X, Y, and Z, what would those things be?
There's 3 principles that I always use when I'm communicating my ESG messaging. And this is, to me, the holy grail. We know Kotler is 4 Ps. We know that. That is not going to be applicable completely when it comes to ESG communications. The 4 principles will be purpose, process, platform, and people. You need to figure out what's the purpose of your ESG messaging. Why now? And what you're trying to achieve. You need to figure out what is the process that you're going to follow when it comes to identifying the data, the accuracy of the data, and when you're trying to test your messaging. Because processes is key to eliminate any inconsistencies. The platform is also key when it comes to which platforms are best for what type of messaging. Which one are best for your E versus the S versus the G? People are your most important asset. They're the ones who are going to test these messages on your behalf, and they're the ones who are going to let you know what you want and what you should be saying to them. So this is the 4 principles. When it comes to the actual messaging, so physical messaging, the messaging has to be extremely positive, because we're not geared to negative information and to keep retaining negative information. It needs to be holistic. And that's one of the biggest problems we're having at the moment. We're telling the campaigns are not linked. I call them campaign vomiting. You're vomiting the campaign and then you're forgetting about it, and then you're going into another campaign. No, the campaigns have to be adherent. They have to be interlinked, and they have to tell a holistic story. As humans, we love a good story, and we love to understand what the role we play in your story. Okay. Last but not least, it needs to be embedded in your business as usual communications internally. You have to be making sure that it's a norm and not an exception. So don't communicate ESG when it's Black History Month, for example, or when it's Earth Day. Keep on talking about it. You make it the norm internally as well as externally. And this is my advice.
Amazing. All right. Well, let's get into the group discussion. But thank you in advance for doing this, Gihan. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.